Hello Africa, it is Wednesday, the 20th day of June 2018. A very good evening and a warm welcome to your favorite Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa. On this day that the world marked the World Refugee Day, I have an exclusive interview with Ambassador Mohamed Efei. We're going to run that within this program. But first, let me take you straight to our highlights tonight.
We had been discussing the issue of security. We have differences on the time frame.
Two South Sudan protagonists meet in Addis Ababa for face-to-face talks for the first time in 5 years. South African authorities are looking for suspected carjackers who shot and killed a member of parliament.
Thoughts and options. That information has to be available. In that way, we are protecting against unintended pregnancy.
Tonight, we'll tell you why over-the-counter purchase of contraceptives remains a much muted subject in Rwanda. Plus, celebrations to mark this year's World Refugee Day as concern mounts over the growing numbers worldwide. Good evening once again. The program begins right now. And on our top story tonight, we have something about the youngest nation in Africa, that is South Sudan. And South Sudan's rebel leader, Riek Machar, has met President Salva Kiir, the first between the two since a peace deal between the government and Machar's rebel group fell apart in August 2016. Machar arrived in Ethiopia earlier today for the meeting with South Sudan's President Salva Kiir as part of talks to try to negotiate an end to a 5-year civil war. An Ethiopian government official also confirmed Machar's arrival and said he will meet Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed before his talks with Kiir. All sides in the now complex and multi-war stand accused by the United Nations and other bodies of committing atrocities against civilians. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in the civil war that broke out in late 2013 when troops loyal to Machar, the former vice president of South Sudan, launched a rebellion against the government.
IGAD has decided to call face-to-face dialogue between our president, Salva Kiir Mayardit, and Riek Machar on the outstanding issues. I think this will take place today as scheduled on the 20th, and the summit will be tomorrow. Before the summit, there will be a Council of Ministers of IGAD. We had been discussing the issue of security. We have differences on the time frame. The opposition are talking about 12 to 18 months, and the government is talking about 120 days for integration of the forces. And if we take the period that has been suggested by opposition, it is just the same like what has happened last time. Is initially going to 2 armies, and we cannot afford to have 2 armies in South Sudan anymore. So that is what.
Now, over to South Africa, where Sibusiso Radebe, an ANC member of parliament in Mpumalanga, was last night killed during a hijacking attempt in Rhodoport, that is in Gauteng. The politician suffered gunshot wounds to his head and leg during the attack on Tuesday night. Radebe was an immensely popular figure for both his party and politicians on rival benches. South African members of parliament have sent condolences, praising the work ethic of the 40-year-old MP. Authorities are on the lookout for 2 suspects who they believed orchestrated this crime. Preliminary reports indicate that the deceased was with another person in a vehicle parked in Carbon Street, that is in Lindaven, when 2 suspects allegedly approached the vehicle and opened fire, fatally wounding the deceased while his companion managed to escape uninjured. The suspects then reportedly made off in a Ford Fiesta, dark in color with a known registration. Now, as Zimbabwe heads to the first national elections of the post-Mugabe era, the voice of young people is louder than ever in a vote between the old guard of Zimbabwe's 1970s independence war and younger generation. Now, a 32-year-old activist and lawyer, Fazai Mahere, who is running for parliament for the first time, says the country is at the turn of an age. Fazai Mahere is campaigning for a parliamentary seat in Zimbabwe's first national election since Robert Mugabe was forced to resign after almost 40 years in power. The 32-year-old lawyer and activist is running as an independent candidate for the Mount Pleasant constituency, a residential suburb in the capital, Harare. Her message: the youth must step up after years of being dominated by a generation that lacked a vision for Zimbabwe's future. Candidates for the July 30th parliamentary and presidential poll presented their papers to the Electoral Commission there, sitting at the courts last week.
We can sit and complain about how difficult things are in Zimbabwe, about how terrible our political options are, but we can also get involved and be the change that we wish to see in Zimbabwe. I think what the country is looking for is competence. They're looking for people who can deliver on their promises and have got the ability to stand up for the issues that are, their daily struggles on a daily basis. So absolutely, yes. I think obviously, sometimes people focus on the fact that, but she's a female candidate. But I think ultimately, once you prove your mettle, people get over the fact that you so happen to be a woman. Because at the end of the day, when you deliver, when you speak in parliament, your gender is completely irrelevant. So yes, this country is ready.
Now, despite progress made in access to universal health care, in Rwanda, stigma attached to purchase and use of contraceptives still remains high. KTN's Kigali Best correspondent Eugene Anangwe has the details. Take a look.
Most data.
Dr. Aphrodis Kagawa, the Executive Director of Health Development Initiative, an independent non-governmental organization aimed at improving both the quality and accessibility of healthcare through advocacy, education and training, told a press briefing that it is still difficult to access contraceptives and other sexual reproductive healthcare services. To deal with this challenge, he advised that societies needed to be empowered to be able to make sound decisions on their reproductive health.
Not only students, but also even the young people should have access to condoms. I don't think it's also easy for a young boy or a young girl in a village to go and buy a condom if they are there. Because the stigma. Everyone who would see you would tell the story to all your neighbors that they saw you buying a condom. So it's a very complicated conversation, but we believe that we have to keep the conversation going.
The media, he said, should play its role in fighting the stigma by creating spaces for informed conversations on sexual reproductive health and rights to take place.
Because in the end, we need people who are making policies, people who are implementing programs to do so with the right information, to make informed decisions. Because when we forget about data, young people are sexually active. Talk to schools, do some surveys. They will tell you they are sexually active. Look at DHS. Sexually active, starting as early as 12, 13. Some of them have boyfriends, girlfriends, and we are trying to ignore it. We don't want to open that discussion.
The rate at which numbers of teenage pregnancies are going up is worrying, says Lydia Muthiani, a senior attorney at Women's Link Worldwide, a non-governmental organization that uses the power of the law to promote social change that advances the human rights of women and girls.
Part of what has been posited is that there needs to be comprehensive sexuality education which is given. And this starts from a place where teenagers at that point, they're having changes in their bodies. They need to understand what that means and what precautions they should take and what options are available to them. On top of also enjoying the act of having sex, because that is an eventuality. We can try to say that it doesn't happen, but it does happen, yeah? But very importantly is to educate them about family planning, methods and options. That information has to be available. In that way, we are protecting against unintended pregnancies. These pregnancies should really not be happening when it comes to teenagers.
Gaps, according to Lydia, lie on the lack of full implementation of the rights to sexual reproductive health care that are clearly stipulated and offered in both regional and national legal instruments across the continent.
Once there's a lack of understanding that this lack of access leads to criminalization of women and girls. Why? Because if you don't have access, then there will probably be a bad outcome or a negative, for instance, a negative pregnancy outcome. And for that, women are then prosecuted and convicted for these crimes. They cannot even seek for help. If you suffer from a spontaneous abortion, then you go to hospital and then you are charged. You're reported for procuring an abortion.
Document I want to refer you to.
For KTN News in Kigali, Rwanda, I'm Eugene Anangwe.
Thank you, Eugene, for that.